Hello, and welcome to CyberPsych, an photography podcast where we talk with industry professionals about the human side of technology, how it relates to the field of security, and how it impacts your overall business. I'm Dr. Stacy Thayer, and I'm a cyber psychologist and senior manager of research engagement in photography. And I'm here today with special guest Chris Gates. Chris is a senior offensive security manager at Robinhood. He's a graduate of the United States Military Academy and an Army veteran. He's definitely a well-known information security professional and has spoken at over 50 conferences around the world. And if you've had the chance to see him or hear him talk, he's fantastic to listen to. He's also a spiritual fitness coach and energy healer, and he's here today to talk about the relationship between hacking and security and mental health and happiness. So welcome, Chris. It's super excited to have you and get into this today.
You're welcome, Stacy. Thanks for letting me have a chance to talk to the audience and having me
Yeah.
in.
So in recent years, and I mean, I see your LinkedIn, I see, various social media, but I've noticed that you've become a huge advocate for mental health, which always, it's really exciting to watch and read. But what really I think is cool what you've done is you've used your expertise in security and hacking to then bridge that gap between the hacker mindset and mental health. So can you share what led you down that path and where you are with it, what you've been doing, just kind of the 10,000 foot view of your perspective?
Sure. Stop me if it gets long. Uh, um, how did I get started on that? It was DEF CON 24 in 2016. Everything on LinkedIn should have suggested that things were going the best they have ever gone. I was the first offensive security engineer at Facebook. I was at Uber then. I had an amazing time working with like Chris Nickerson and Eric Smith over at Laura's.
Yeah.
And we were at the hotel formerly known as Artisan. I think it's got
Oh,
a new name, changes every year. Um,
it has a lot of memories there.
right. And I should have been the most happy I've ever been, and I was actually the saddest I have ever been. So bad that like a mutual friend like John Cran was like asking my wife like, "Is he okay?"
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so it had been a long, long like road of depression. And around that time, yeah, I'd hit all my goals and everything and I was like, I kind of hit a now what kind of zone.
Hmm.
And that led me into being super depressed, suicidal. And eventually I was like, I need help. And so I went to the doctor and, you had the conversation and he was like, yeah, we can start to get you on the antidepressants and start getting you into therapy. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I kind of got on the road to do that. And I encourage everyone to do that. Like if they're not feeling well, they should go see their doctor. Like they shouldn't go do all the alternative things that I'm about to talk about. You should go see your doctor. Um, but I came across this video by Dolores Cannon. So as people, if you're on TikTok, there's a lot of Dolores Cannon videos. She's passed away now, but she was like a very well known hypnotherapist. And this video clip said, if you're struggling in this life, it may be related to things in a past life. And I had never really been brought up on that kind of belief or knew much about that. But something with that took hold of me, and I was like, I want to experiment with this hypnotherapy thing. And about that time, I got $1,000 from a bug bounty program that I just didn't think I would get. I said, okay, I'm going to spend this $1,000 on this hypnotherapist, as many sessions as I can get, and if this doesn't work, back to the doctor to get on the antidepressants. And I would say the first one. So I found one in Northern Virginia that seemed okay. Just looking at different websites. First session I would say was just okay. I think most of us are afraid of like what we say to others that can be used against us, especially as hackers. Right? Like we went through that whole doxing craze where like probably a lot of our friends were doxed, and like so that's always in the back of my mind of like, is anything I say going to be recorded and I'm going to hear it on Twitter later, when I thought I was having a private conversation. But
Hmm.
so okay for a session. Second session, really the only way I can explain it is whatever deity you believe in. I call it I'll say the universe as we talk today, but the universe came in and embraced me. And at that moment, I actually didn't feel alone. So I had a house with kids and my wife. I felt alone. Friends, I felt alone. Everything in my life, I felt alone and like I was isolated on this planet. And in that moment, I didn't feel alone anymore. And that was really what I would say was the bottom, the hitting the rock bottom of that bad spiral that began the journey up. So did a lot of hypnotherapy, past life regressions, life between lives, hypnosis, QHET hypnosis, because uh, as a hacker, I want to know how all this stuff works.
Right.
And so I turn on the, all right, I feel like despite, the way you said about being an energy healer and coach and things, I'm still a pretty healthy skeptic. Like if it doesn't work for me, then I don't believe in it. So I was like, okay, let's just keep seeing if this works. And I just kept seeing gains. I also, in one of the sessions, told myself to learn Reiki. And I was like, I'd never heard that word before. And I was like, what is that? And the practitioner was like, what's this energy thing? And I was like, that sounds stupid. Like, what is that? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I
I don't
can't
believe
see it. I can't touch it. Like,
it. Touch it.
I can't
There's
break
a
it.
there's invisible energy that you can harness and send to people or send to yourself. I was like, that sounds like Saturday morning stuff. Well, like 6 months later, I found myself on a Reiki table. Had some things going on with my life, and that really started a journey of understanding energy work and just learning more about myself. I got into a mentorship with a person here in Northern Virginia, and it was like a spiritual mentorship. And we spent 6 months just really learning who I was and
Mm,
getting exposed to these different modalities. So that's how I kind of got my start, and that's where I started understanding all the trauma I had accumulated over my life that every human accumulates.
mhm.
And over the years, I've said no matter how hard you try, you're creating trauma for your kids. You're trading trauma for other people that you work with. Even if you're the most mindful parent, you're still unintentionally doing these things. And so I just kind of got to, again, I just do the hacker thing on it, like deep. You just see a topic and you dig and you dig and you dig. Now the problem with metaphysics is I don't know if it has a bottom, right? It
Mm,
just keeps
mhm.
going and it keeps expanding, but usually you are expanding with it and growing. It's just like learning oh, I learned a new programming language, or I learned this new tool. I'm an expert with this tool I found on GitHub to do a thing. I now have that in my repertoire of healing things to do or ways to look at the world in a different place, and you just keep accumulating them, just like we do, just like our peers do in the industry who have been doing this for 20 years, 30 years. They've just accumulated a lot of knowledge via the
Yeah,
experiences they've had.
yeah.
So let me pause there because I don't want to get too long. I guess I'll add. And then I've now shifted a little bit to working with plant medicines. So that was kind of the next thing. There's a lot of, like I think a lot of people point to Aaron Rodgers, the football player who does ayahuasca in the off seasons, and it has really unlocked a lot of healing and insight for him. And so, while I don't think that's for everybody, there's lots of people that it's not for. I was feeling the call to work with mushrooms and ayahuasca and some of the other medicines, and that's really, I think, has brought me to the next level of being comfortable with who I am, being comfortable to like come on and talk about
Mhm.
my trauma and mistakes I've made and things that have happened to me, because the only way to get through them is usually just for someone else to show that they did it and it's okay. So I really
Yeah,
look at sharing this journey is really my journey right now to show other people that they can do it too, because I'm not special. Right? Everybody can do this.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting hearing your journey and kind of what works and what takes you out of it and or out of that happiness, out of that depression. And I've talked to a lot of different people, and there's so much stigma around mental health, and there's so much stigma around even religion, and and just around what to believe and who we are, right? And um so a lot of times I feel like people, if they're feeling depressed, and yeah, you look around and you're like, hey, like, I have a job, I have a family, it feels good. What's not going on inside
Yeah.
that isn't, what's not translating? Why? And um it's funny because I'll talk to people and I'm like, you never get sad. Like, you don't just wake up and you're sad for no reason. They're like, nope. I'm like, huh.
What's that like?
Okay.
Right?
Huh. Like, I didn't know what to do with that. And like, I've talked with a couple people who were like that. And, in the security industry, like there's a lot there's a pretty high suicide rate. And, it's like, and I try to talk to people, about burnout, and a lot of times meditation comes up, and so like the talk I did at Black Hat was like, okay, here's if you Google right now like how to manage stress and how to handle depression, it's like go for a walk, exercise more, eat right. And I always say like, okay, no, that's great, I want to get there. I would excuse me, my ideal self, I'm somebody who works out every day, meditates regularly, eats my fruit and veggies. In reality, there's some days when I'm like, I'm not running unless I'm chased.
Right.
And I can't find my inner peace. Like to meditate, just I can't be alone with my thoughts right now. And if I do, it's 30 seconds and I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm eating Taco Bell. So, which is, there's no judgment on Taco Bell, by the way, I'm a big fan. But,
Love it. Love it.
3 or 4 days in a row, you're just like, I can't cook, I can't do anything. You're surviving. And so I love the your journey where it started was asking questions, that I don't have to be like this. I'm in survival mode, but I don't have to be. And that there is an answer that can be anything from, whatever works for you, whether it's, and for you, what I'm, interested in hearing more too. I'm getting to a question. How do you think, like, when you finally decided, all right, I've had enough, and you found into this, what about it made you persevere? Is it that hacker mindset of I'm going to keep going and tapping until I understand this? Do you feel like it was a calling? What advice to that person who's like, I'm just going to drink because I don't know what else to do, or I'm on self-destructive habits or near suicidal? How do you give them that hand to reach out and pull them up because they're down?
Yeah. Oh, okay. There's
There's a
multi.
lot there. Sorry, that was like 5 questions. There's a lot of talking and then 5 questions.
Yeah, we'll see how we do. Um, as far as I guess like reaching out,
Mhm.
one I would tell people like it's okay to feel the feels,
Mm.
and I a lot of times we, especially I'd say like most people that are in infosec, upper middle class or higher, right?
Mhm.
So you've got a whole population of the United States or the world who's like, what do you have to complain about?
Yeah.
Right. And so that weighed on me too, because I started with like, I had this amazing career. Why are you sad, Chris? You have everything that you wanted. I was like, well, I hear you, but I still feel sad, right? Like I still
Right.
feel incomplete. Um,
Yeah.
and so one of the things that has occurred to me on this journey is, and I think this applies to a lot of hackers, is most humans are on this planet to serve, right? Serve in some capacity. And most of us who are in infosec, we serve by protecting companies or protecting people, right? Educating them so that they don't get taken advantage of, or so our employers don't get hacked. And I would say that that is noble, and I think that is in the right direction. But I think at least in the United States, we get told to serve in the military, law enforcement, fire, EMS, doctor. Those are the ways to serve. Well, those are not the all encompassing ways to serve. And in fact, I would say those ones that I just laid out have a lot of negative cons to them. Like
Mhm.
like I was in the military. Like our job to serve is to go places and murder people. Right? That's the job, is to
Yeah.
hate other countries, hate other religions, hate other people, and do the bidding of the president of the United States, whatever that may be. When it usually means going somewhere and occupying a space by force. So you're serving, but are you really serving humanity in the right way with that? I would argue no. As someone that was in the military, I didn't have to ever spend much time in any place that was too dangerous, but many of my classmates did. Many of my classmates didn't come home, and so you have this idea of service, and I think most of the hackers can relate to that. And what I started to learn was there are other ways to serve. There are ways to serve humans by being there for them and doing. And that's how I kind of found myself into the energy work, and then later into the coaching. Is this is how right now I feel called to serve, is I can listen. I have learned how to open my heart, because my heart was super closed, as most people's are, because that's a defense mechanism to survival on this planet,
Yeah.
is closing our heart, because I can't get hurt if my heart's closed. I don't let you
Oh,
in,
we're not
you can't hurt me.
yeah, we're not made to be vulnerable. In fact, you spend your entire time not being vulnerable, and your career is not being vulnerable, and then now let's be vulnerable, right?
Right. And especially like, yeah, even to go back to the doxing, like you're putting yourself out there, and you've got people that for a while, I think it's calmed down now, but like going after people like Christian and myself and lots of all of our friends that you're like, I'm just trying to serve, and you're attacking me for doing this because you don't
Right.
like it for some reason. So be so yeah, heart closed. So now I look at it as like, okay, my heart is open, or I'm still working to open my heart. How can I teach others to open their heart? How can I hold space for someone? And so it's now doing that as an energy healer, as a coach, as a manager. I try to bring all of the mindfulness in to, am I creating a space for the people that work with me where they feel safe to say, I don't know how to do something, or I made a mistake. Because I definitely work places where I couldn't say that. But that's a part of doing this business. Like we're sometimes doing many things for the first time, new technologies, new things, but we can set this expectation that I can't fail. And I think that can drive some depression. For me, to circle all that back, was I didn't feel like I was doing my purpose, and that
Hmm.
was what put me into depression. I do realize there are lots of other reasons that people could be depressed, chemical and other things, but for me, it was, I found out later, I was like not doing everything I should be doing, and it began that journey of figuring out what am I actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think you asked about meditation too, right? Or did you want
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, at least is for a lot of people, that's sort of where it starts. It's like the barrier to entry of like, okay, at least meditate, because there's lots of studies that show that that's really good for your brain and just that quiet and all of that. But like, I'm ADHD, so like sitting there for like 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, like it's like Eat, Pray, Love, right? Where she's like, okay, has it been 30 seconds? Like, and
Right.
like it's
Oh,
been,
I'm doing it. Oh crap, I'm not doing it.
yeah,
Um,
not doing it. I cannot clear my brain. And I mean, you're asking people who are really smart most of the time, and like to empty their thoughts. That's really a
yeah.
challenge.
So I will give you my personal take. I'm not a Buddhist or anything, but I look at meditation as, am I thinking about the thing that I intend to think about?
Mm,
Okay, so that doesn't. So if I choose for the thing that I think about to be not thinking about anything, that is one form of meditation. Chanting would be another form of meditation. Listening to music would be another form of meditation. If I am not thinking about the thing I have to do 30 minutes from now while I'm listening to that song, but I'm in the song. So when I teach people meditation, I give them a variety of different things. So you can do guided meditations, chanting, music, visualizations. You kind of dial in what works for people. And it's not the Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda one with, that is a sliver of meditation, and that's
right.
great for some people, and there someone may want to work to that. I wouldn't suggest they start with that. It's very difficult. So
Okay.
I usually suggest people start with Vishen Lakhani from Mind Valley has the 6 phase meditation. I think it's about 14 minutes long, and you're just having to pay attention to things for like 2.5 minutes, and then it switches to another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing.
Okay.
Usually do a minute or two on a thing, and then about the time, that's when my mind wanders. But now we're on to a new thing, and a new thing, and a new thing.
Yeah.
So it's about, okay, hacking your own mind and understanding that. And I also say that most people understand the phrase mind over matter, but really with meditation, it's soul over mind. So the mind has been
Mm,
conditioned to always be looking for problems. It's in our DNA to look for the negative in things because that's what humans do. We see the negative. Oh, that could be improved. Let's think about that. And so the brain is just running too much. And so we really do want to just to start to understand what functions are running, what's the source code that's running, and then is are those actually memory safe? Are those actually good for me? Are those programs and subroutines that are running, are they actually healthy and doing good? Or were they programmed by somebody else? And a lot of times they are. And then we want to inspect those. And I
right.
talk about that. I try to make that analogy in the Hacking Your Happiness talks of like, you got programmed as a child. We don't actually usually inspect that programming, but someone else programmed it. It may not be the best program or subroutine for you. And so, as an adult, as we get into meditation, meditation creates the space to take a look at that. You're like, oh, I actually want to look at that. Show it to me. And then you're like, okay. When you start to create a little bit of space, and it's just like anything, it just takes practice, right? Like
Yeah.
No one that's listening to this the first time they started Metasploit or started a debugger or started anything was good at it. Like I fumbled around, but eventually you might become a developer. You might write your own tools. You might do these other things. It's just the same process that we do with everything else, and just being gentle with yourself to know this is the first time I'm doing it. I'm not going to be good at it. I'm probably not going to be good at it the first 100 times I do it, and just making that okay.
Yeah, I love that. Because right, it seems like, oh, how hard can meditation be? You just sit there, right? But it's like, no,
Really
and
hard.
it's really hard. And the other thing that I've been practicing doing too is noticing where I keep my tension in my body too. Like everything, I hold everything here. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I'm sleeping, like I'm Bella Lugosi, like rise from the dead. But like, my for those who can't see, my hands are sort of like butterflied around my neck, chest area. But like that, it's like versus, or like, is it in my stomach? Is it in the pit of your stomach? Like where is it that you're feeling this? And what I've kind of come to realize, and I tell people when I'm talking about burnout or whatever, it's like, when are you your best self, and what is that? What is it? What do you feel like then? And like, so I'll play video games or I'll binge watch a TV show, but I'm not present. In fact, it's the opposite. I'm disconnected. I'm disassociating. The brain is like, just I'm getting. I want to. When I travel, I'm my best self. I'm like this. I'm
Mm,
happy. I'm growing. I am learning. I like who I am. Like, and I had the opportunity to travel a couple weeks ago, and I'm holding on to how that felt to see, okay, how can I bring that into my day to day life? And the only reason is really like, I mean, just because I do like traveling, but I'm present for every single moment of it. It's in the moment. It's present. I feel things. I watch things, and in a way that in my day to day life, to be that present would be exhausting.
yeah. You asked earlier, like, how do you get off the couch?
Yeah.
What I would normally say is like Tony Robbins talks about if you want to change your state, you have to change your physical self.
Yeah.
And so if I'm sitting here in the dungeon, and I'm finding myself not feeling the way that I want to feel, he would say it's time to get up and go for a walk and
Yeah.
take the dog for a walk and go do something because you can't change your mental state if you don't change your physical body. No, there is a little bit of like you've just got to do it. I don't have a magic bullet to get you out, except maybe that's where hopefully friends, family, if you tell people you're hurting, they can like,
Yeah.
hey, do you want to go out? I know you're not feeling well. Let's go out. The best thing for that is to put the Taco Bell down and go eat Taco Bell at the restaurant,
Yeah.
right? Like
Feel that.
I'll meet you there to eat it instead of eating it
Yeah.
at home, whatever it takes to get the movement, because it is hard to be upset if you're doing that, and that can start to again you can start to bring excitement into your life, and
Yeah.
there's a few tools that do that too of like what experiences do you want to have in your life and like making that list and saying okay well I'm feeling down, let me find something on the list that I can do just to I know I need to get up to
Yeah.
change my state. What can I do today? What's within 20 minutes of my house or 30 minutes of my house that I want to do?
Yeah.
And if you can get moving, it's almost like when you're great example, like when you're doing a pen test, man, you're banging your head against the wall. As soon as you get the one little thing, that's when it opens up, right? And then you can kind of dig it, you can dive into that. We're
Yeah.
really looking for mentally or in our lives, what's the little thing that can get me started on
Yeah.
on the next thing? And that's going to be unique for everyone, but now that you kind of know that, oh, that's what I need to be looking for, that's what I need to do, you can say, okay, maybe I got to phone a friend or do whatever. The other thing I will add very quickly on that is in my depression, I felt like I was calling out for help. And then when I finally did like the Facebook post saying that I was depressed and I'm changing my life in these ways, I had all these people go, I had no idea. I was like, I felt like I was being loud about it. So I would say if
Yeah.
anyone's there, like you might have to very clearly say I need help.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got their own stuff going on and no one wants to assume the worst,
Yeah, they don't wanna
right?
ask, like, "How's your
Yeah, but
suicidal ideation?" Right, it
yeah,
doesn't work that way.
ideally, you've got 1 or 2 people that you trust, like, "Man, I'm in a bad spot. Can we go hang
Yeah.
out?" And you might just have to go take it a little further because yeah, I felt like I was crying for help and nobody was coming, and I felt even more alone.
I
And come
know.
to find out, they just didn't hear it because I wasn't
Yeah.
saying it loud enough. So
Yeah. Yeah, and when we look, like I said earlier, it's like a high, pretty high suicidal rate and depression rate, and, um, So I'm caught by surprise so many times by who it is. So, and you're like, oh my God, I never knew. Was it how did I not know? Were they asking for help? And you're playing every conversation in your brain as,
Yeah.
and, but the fact is that people are busy, if they're not looking for it, if they're not paying attention, things have changed a lot since our 20s. And, we've got little people we're responsible for and spouses and our jobs and managing teams. And, um,
There's a lot of distractions and a lot of things to keep you out of self work.
yeah, yeah. Now you run a meditation group at work, is that right? Or
Yeah, it's called Brain Body Heart.
Brain Body Heart? Yeah. So, and I love the idea of that because I think um, a lot, in my opinion, a lot of companies, let's preface this disclaimer, but a lot of companies they do want to invest in people's mental health, but they don't know how. And there's been this great movement towards unlimited PTO, but not everybody knows how to take it or how to disconnect. I mean, you have to uninstall Slack, Google, turn off your Google alert, turn on, basically like go to Mars so nobody can talk to you. But and you do it. I don't know. I do it to myself. I'm like, I'll just check in for a second.
Yep, same.
Uh, the next thing you know, crap. Um, what would you recommend? So how can you tell me the story about that? How did that get started or how did you get involved with it? And then advice for companies that may want to have a program like that.
Yeah. I wish I could take credit for starting it, but it does predate me. When I showed up at Rob, it was a reaction to COVID and all the remote work. One of the people that worked there created this group and got some corporate buy-in for that. Uh, I started out just going because this is my jam. I love talking about this, so I just joined as a member, and then the person running it was like, "Oh, do you want to help out?" I was like, "Sure, I'll help out." And then she's like, "Do you want to do meditations?" And I was like, well, I'm really scared to do those in public. So yeah, I'll do it because this is the only way to get through my fear of doing it is to do it. So I started running meditations twice a month. And then she's like, "Oh, do you want to co-lead?" I was like, I guess. And then all of a sudden, now I'm in charge. And so I was like, how did this happen? And that's been a journey of just being, um, this is something that I want to do. I want to bring more of this because I do think that these topics can help people I care about, which is the hacking community. And I was like, the universe just guided me kind of kicking and screaming into being in charge of this and having to figure out, well, how do I actually build a mindfulness program for my employer?
Right.
Um, and so there's a few other companies like SAP is probably the most famous company that has someone that's their job is to run mindfulness for SAP. And so I went and watched all his TED Talks and his articles and started looking for other people that are doing this. There's some other businesses that teach classes on it. And I said, okay, well, things can't get any worse. So like, let's just start trying to bring in these topics um, into the environment. So I think advice for anybody that's doing it. You need a corporate sponsor. You need some top cover. Um, you need to have a space that's safe. You need to have a little money to bring in speakers or to buy things. Although we run on I would say, a pretty limited budget. There's a lot of people that would love to come talk to an organization because they're passionate about the topic, just like myself. Um, but you also want to bring in speakers. I know not like sure, I'm a good speaker, but I know everyone doesn't want to hear me every month. They want to hear other people. So you can bring in other people that want to talk about these subjects. And that's where really the magic begins is as the lead, I get to engage with all these people that I find really interesting on TikTok or Instagram or on LinkedIn. And it allows me to reach out and make these relationships and hear their stories or how they've done it. And most people just want to share. They just want to serve.
Yeah.
So you're actually doing everyone a solid by bringing in these people who just want to share their message and serve.
And how do you reach critical mass with that? Like so many, especially smaller companies, it's people are busy. So even if it's like a social, like, hey, let's get together and have coffee, it's hard. You get maybe like five people and then it loses momentum and you're awkward. Okay. So yeah. And so let me start with that and then I'll ask my other questions. But yeah, how do you get critical mass?
I wish I knew. We're struggling with that with Zoom fatigues and
Yeah.
all the meetings. Ask the group. If you have a group, ask the group what they want. Helps, all right? Because then
Mhm.
you're at least bringing events at the times people can make them. On the days, people can make them. You're bringing in the topics that at least a handful of people want to see. And then just like building any community, it's creating a safe space. It's asking the questions, and it's work. It's a lot of work to build a community. Anybody that's done
Yeah.
it on any information, like in a Discord or whatever, or Slack, very difficult to bring a community and get people to engage. The secret is the leads have to go first. Just like a
Yes.
manager, if I want to create a safe space or vulnerability in my team, I have to be vulnerable first. So as the person that's trying to create this group, you have to do a lot of work and hope that your motivation carries you long enough for that to build some momentum.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it could be a fun team activity. Like, so in another company that I worked at, right, there was a murder mystery or, one of those type things. And we weren't going. And then our manager was like, let's all do it. It'll be like a team activity kind of thing. And we had a blast and it was a team builder, but yeah, she had to take us kind of kicking and screaming. But it ended up like, there's so many times we pass on the things that could bring us joy,
Yeah.
and being able to recognize that and be like, okay, maybe I give it a try, or maybe I do it with some friends, and that snowball effect. But I 100% agree that makes total sense. Of right, it has to start with the leader saying, let's all go do this together, and maybe it's fun, and maybe it's a monthly thing we do or something like that. It has to get buy-in at
And
the
we
top.
when we have speakers, we record them. So I understand people are busy, and so I recorded everything. So well, I still want you to watch it. I still want people to watch it. Maybe they started at the business later, or they just missed it. Any like if a single person wants to watch it, I want to be able to give them the opportunity
Yeah.
to be able to watch it, and to engage. And yeah, it's tough though, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll pause there. It's been one of the hardest things I've had to work on. To talk about like going through your fear of like, am I picking the right things for a whole group of people? Very scary.
Yeah.
I just have to just hope for feedback. Hope that my intuition is right. Hope that um, everything just works out. And thankfully, I think we have a core group of people who are vocal. If something's not going well, they will let me know, and usually in a kind way, and we can adjust. But ultimately, I
And
think
one
people
of-
see the effort and just want to.
yeah. Yeah.
Everybody wants it. They just don't always know that they need it.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's a priority to make the time. Um,
Right. And it builds.
yeah.
The more you can help fix yourself, or not maybe fix, but help yourself or heal yourself, really, the more energy and time and everything. It's kind of like the inverse of what you would think. The more I heal myself, the more I have to give to others. So
I
you
always
can
say it's like
you can
when
be
you're
you
on
can
the
be
airplane.
selfish. Yeah, you can be selfish about it, right?
Right. Right. Well, like when you're on the airplane and they say put before helping a child, right, put your oxygen mask on first. And like as a mother, it's like your first instinct is like, no, I have to protect the child. And I
Right.
remember thinking about this and like, oh right, but if I pass out mid while putting this on my child, I can't help them. And so
Exactly.
that's one of my kind of things I see is it's like put your oxygen mask on first. Um, and one of the things you said in your happiness talk and your hacking your way to happiness talk was do something that scares you, effectively. That if you're afraid of it, you're on the right path. Was kind of my takeaway of things. And I find like going to Africa by myself. That was scary. It was really
Yeah, it is
scary, but it was
scary.
triumphant. It was like, cool, I'm going to do this. And then I felt more confident as a person because I'm like, hey, I just did this kind of like pretty, challenging thing. It wasn't that, it ended up not being that challenging, but the idea was like to get on a plane and go by myself and talk to people and everything. And
It's
I was like,
scary.
oh, I can do that thing. I can do other hard things too. And I tell my kids this all the time because they get anxious about stuff. And I'm like, you done this, and this. You can do that. And that kind of self talk.
Yeah. I think there's a kid's book. We're definitely stronger than you believe.
Yes, you're. What is it? You're braver than you believe, stronger than you think, and
Yeah, yeah.
smarter
It's
than you
true.
say. Whatever it is, and love more than you'll ever know. Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. And we're taught that working on self is selfish, but that is actually not true, right? Like you just said, the more stable I am, the more I have for my kids, the more I have for my
yeah,
job, the more I have for the people that work on me, the more that I have to connect with the people that the universe wants me to connect with. The more
yeah,
energy I have to post that video on LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever if I'm taking care of myself. So
yeah.
it does actually, it builds that solid base so that you can actually, if you have a solid base, you're a little more willing to try that scary thing than if it's not solid. Like if you're just scrambled and just trying to survive, well, if I'm trying to, if I'm in survival mode, I'm not going to go try a thing that I don't know how it's going to go. But if I'm
Right.
stable, I say, well, if I fall, I'll be back on solid ground. So you
Yeah.
gotta get yourself on solid ground, and it's by
Yeah.
taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And it's hard to do. And it was one of the reasons why I ended up going to Africa is because someone had said to me, "Go do something for yourself." Now I realized they meant like a painting class or go see a movie or whatever, but hey, um, but the exercise of when my husband was fine. We had a conversation. It was a conversation. I wasn't like, "Peace, I'm out," but have fun with the
Right.
kids. Book though, no, it was not like that. Um, but the different reactions from my mom, from my mother, like, from everybody, like, what do you mean you're spending your own money on yourself when you have kids? And what do you mean that the father is going to watch the kids while the mother goes away? I'm like, okay, that's a whole other thing. But like,
Yeah, they're old enough.
yeah, the hoops that I had to go through to do something to take care of me. And I saw my doctor last week. She's like, "You look like a totally different person." It was like, yeah, because I've been taking care of everybody else for so long. I hadn't put my oxygen mask on, and I feel like a totally different person. So to get to the point of what you do also is I think that it sounds to me, you would know better, but by doing that mental work, you're looking at your own energy, your own state of mind, your own expansion and growth. And while it may in theory be selfish because you are focusing on yourself and you're taking time for yourself and you're growing yourself, it's it's a good thing to do. That you need to focus on yourself, and by getting in touch with yourself, you can get in touch with that sadness. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
What advice do you have for people to help them get aware of their own state of mind? So if they're like, I don't want to commit, I don't want to pay money for Reiki, I don't want to, I don't know, I don't want to be stereotyped or stigma into a therapist. I don't know where to start. I've done this a lot with when I was in Southern California working with people coming to sobriety. Like, how do they start? And so with mental health too, uh, and this kind of energy work, yeah, where do you just start?
Man, ooh, good question. I, I guess I would say, I think we talked about this. Science hasn't caught up to a lot of metaphysics,
Hmm.
and you know, before there were microscopes, we believed a completely different thing about why people got sick or other things, and it wasn't until later that we understood there was another reason. So I personally, this is like probably spicy take. I just don't believe that science has caught up to consciousness and the things that are happening in our bodies. And so what I tell clients or what I tell myself or what I tell my kids is, in the absence of scientific proof, which I would always prefer, repeated experience can trump is the evidence of that, right? So like, can I do Reiki? Can I try a mindfulness technique? Can I do this thing? If I do it a few times and I'm getting the same results and it's working for you, then that should be sufficient. Even if mom, dad, sister, brother, friends group don't believe in it, it's okay,
Mm.
right? Because yeah, I mean, energy healing sounds ridiculous, right? But I've done over 1,000 hours of it as between mostly as a practitioner, but I've had hundreds of hours given to myself, and there's just been experiences that I cannot explain otherwise.
Hmm.
And that wasn't one time. So if somebody did something one time and said like, all right, you might need to do that a few more times. But if someone's put 1,000 hours into something and they've had repeated experiences over multiple clients over multiple years in different mental scenarios and things like that, like eventually you have to go, well, feel like there's something to this. Um, so I don't know if that fully answered the question. I tend to
Yeah.
get off track, but um,
You and me both.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think what I'm hearing with that is just beginning with start with an open mind.
Yeah, that's it. Start with
Yeah.
your hacker mindset, which is okay. What is the thing I believe actually true? So when we're talking about limiting beliefs or beliefs that you have, the best question to ask yourself, if you can create the moment to ask, and that's where meditation comes in, is this belief actually true? And then who installed this belief? And is this
Yeah.
belief helping me or holding me back? If you
Yeah.
could start to ask those questions about a belief, you can really start to see most of them are not, they're nonsense, right? Most of our
Yeah.
beliefs are not helping us.
Yeah.
Something I've been thinking about recently is like, I really cared about what people thought about me, about my whole life. That's really been a net negative in my life. Caring what other people think has been a net negative,
Oh god, yeah.
right? But like,
Yes,
I'm
hammer in the
47.
belt.
Why am I learning this at 47?
Right.
That caring what other people think, like strangers think, is a net negative. Well, I'm trying to teach that to my kids. Like if they can carry that in their teens forward, they'll do a lot better than I did.
Yeah.
Same thing with some of the other things I experienced, but um, yeah. And then so yeah, doing the hacker thing, just do the hacker. What's the happy path, right? Okay,
Yeah.
what are the unintended things that could be done? And that's just what you start to do as you inspect all these things. Is that actually true? What other intended behaviors can a system do? And that's hacking, right? Like, well,
Yeah.
the API says you can only do this. Well, what happens if I send it this other character it wasn't expecting? Oh, well, what happens if I interject energy work? What happens if I interject meditation? What happens if I interject forgiveness or
Ooh,
gratitude? Right?
yes.
Like, we could talk
Right.
all day on forgiveness and gratitude. What if I
Yep.
just start letting go of the anger and
Yeah.
realizing that the people that hurt me were also hurting and
Yes.
didn't have the opportunity to process any of that. And while I may be really sick of my parents, they did the best they could because they were really uneducated on how to raise kids.
Yeah.
And you can just start to let things go. And it's like, okay, what happens if? And that's the ultimate hacker question that all of us do anytime we're doing any sort of work. What happens if? So
Yeah. Yeah. Mess around and find out,
yeah,
what happens if, like, all of those
FOFO, yeah.
things. Yeah.
That's, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the motto of my team, right? Will that work? I don't know. Let's find out. Like it will either work or it won't, and then we'll just adjust.
Yeah.
And I've always encouraged more people to bring that into their life. Maybe this relationship. Let's see what happens. Let's cut this person out. Let's see what happens. Let's do this thing. Let's get on a plane and go there. Let's just see what happens. Obviously, keep it safe, but like most of the time, the things that we're afraid to do are not terribly dangerous. It's just
Yeah. You
someone
can
just
you
told us we
can
shouldn't do it. And you're like, well,
yeah,
why?
you can be smart about it, but yeah.
Yeah, is that actually true?
Yeah. Well, and so then as we wrap up, and close out here, you mentioned a couple of great, TikToks and other things. Are there any, so just resources that you recommend? So if somebody's listening and say, "Okay, all right, I'll give it a try. What do I do? Where do I go? Where should I start?"
Yeah. Am I a total
Again,
jerk if I recommend my own stuff?
no, by all means.
So I'm pretty active on Instagram and TikTok. It's the Sky Beckons, where I try to just I learn best by teaching others. That's how I know I've locked it in. And so yeah, my own stuff. But for more famous people, let's see. The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield is an amazing book on synchronicities and energy and the energy dynamics amongst other people. That's a great book. Um, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. All of like Jay Shetty's material, like Think Like a Monk, great book. Mike Dooley's material, and then for the hackers, Joe Dispenza's material is great. He brings science into everything that he talks about, and so
Mhm.
those of us that are healthy skeptics, which we should be, I would encourage them to look at his materials because he shows the brain scans of people that are how they change in meditations, how they heal themselves, and he has a really good series called Rewired, where he talks about that. So if you don't like to consume things in a book fashion, he's got videos. They're in 30-minute clips, which most people can consume.
Mhm.
Trying to think who else. There is a giant amount of that information. Sahara Rose is good. And the other book I wrote down is The Whole Elephant Revealed by Marja DeVries that
Okay.
talks about universal laws. And so everyone's heard of law of attraction, but there's actually like 11 other universal laws. And it's just an interesting thing as a hacker. You're like, okay, what are all the routines that what are the operating systems of the universe? That book really digs into that. And how do you start to tweak those for your own benefit?
Oh,
If you understand how things work, you can start to then make it do things you want or add hey, did you know that it would actually accept this other variable? Well, if you don't inspect the source code or you don't understand how the function works, you don't know that. But there's a lot of functions that run on this reality that you can actually put a few more variables into and get really interesting things out of. So that's
Awesome.
I would encourage everyone that's listening, do their hacker thing on that. Just
Yeah.
play with it, explore it, see where it takes you.
Yeah, and I'll include a link to your site, when this goes online to your bio and everything, so if people wanna reach you or have questions, they can reach out there too.
Yeah, please. I'm here to answer the questions and share and serve the best that I can.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time and your insight. It's been great to have you here.
You're very
And
welcome.
to listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Cyberpsych, and I will see you next time. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. See ya.